There's a strange type of person you've probably met before. Maybe they barely speak in group conversations, but somehow they notice everything. Maybe they ask questions that make people uncomfortable, not because they're rude, but because they cut straight through the surface. Or maybe that person is you. The truth is, highly analytical people don't always look intelligent in the way movies portray intelligence. They're not constantly solving equations or showing off big words. In fact, most of them hide in plain sight. But there are certain behaviors that quietly reveal a mind that never stops analyzing the world. And in this video, we're going to uncover 5 of those behaviors. But here's the interesting part. The last one is often mistaken for a personality flaw, when in reality, it may be the clearest sign of a deeply analytical mind. Once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Let's begin. The first behavior is over-explaining simple things. At first glance, this seems annoying. Why can't some people just give a short answer? Why do they turn a 30-second explanation into a 5-minute breakdown? But underneath that behavior is something deeper. Analytical minds don't just see outcomes. They see systems. When they explain something, their brain automatically traces every invisible step that connects point A to point B. To them, leaving out details feels dishonest, almost like handing someone an incomplete map. This is why analytical people often struggle in casual conversations. Most conversations are built on assumptions and shortcuts, but analytical thinkers instinctively zoom in on the hidden mechanics behind everything. They're constantly asking themselves, but why does this happen? What caused that reaction? What's the pattern underneath this? And sometimes this becomes exhausting, not just for others, but for them too, because the analytical mind rarely rests. It keeps pulling apart situations long after everyone else has moved on. A simple text message becomes a puzzle. A strange tone of voice becomes evidence. A random interaction becomes a case study, which leads directly into the second behavior. They replay conversations in their head over and over again. Most people think this is just social anxiety, and sometimes it is. But for deeply analytical people, it's often something else entirely. Their brain is trying to optimize reality retroactively. After a conversation ends, they unconsciously review it like game footage. They analyze pauses, reactions, wording, facial expressions. They search for hidden meanings and alternative interpretations. They ask themselves what they missed, what they should have said, what the other person really meant. It's like their mind refuses to close unfinished tabs. And while this can make them incredibly self-aware, it can also trap them in endless mental loops. Because life doesn't always provide clear answers. Human behavior is messy. Emotions are contradictory. People say one thing while feeling another. Analytical people struggle with this uncertainty more than most. That's why many of them secretly crave structure. Not because they're boring, but because structure gives their mind something stable to hold on to in a chaotic world. But here's where it gets interesting. The third behavior is something most people completely misunderstand. Highly analytical people often appear emotionally detached, not because they don't feel deeply, but because they process emotions differently. When something painful happens, many people react immediately. They cry, vent, explode, shut down. Analytical minds tend to do something else first. They observe, almost automatically. Part of their brain steps outside the emotion and begins studying it. Why do I feel this way? What triggered this? Is this reaction logical? What pattern does this connect to? To outsiders, this can look cold, but internally, analytical people are often experiencing intense emotional storms. The difference is that they instinctively translate feelings into frameworks before expressing them. And ironically, this habit can make them feel isolated, because emotions are one of the few areas of life that cannot always be solved like a math problem. Sometimes there is no clean explanation. Sometimes pain just exists. That realization frustrates analytical minds more than almost anything else. But there's another behavior that reveals this type of mind even faster. They notice inconsistencies that other people ignore. This is one of the biggest reasons analytical people struggle in social environments. They notice when someone's words don't match their behavior. They notice patterns in relationships. They notice subtle changes in tone, energy, routines, habits. Tiny contradictions that most people filter out automatically become impossible for them to ignore. And once they see those patterns, they can't unsee them. This is why analytical people often become skeptical very early in life. They realize people aren't always rational. They realize systems are flawed. They realize confidence and competence are not the same thing. That awareness changes how they move through the world. It makes them more observant, but also more cautious, more thoughtful, but sometimes more disconnected. Because once you start seeing hidden patterns everywhere, it becomes difficult to fully relax around surface-level interactions. And this is where many analytical people make a dangerous mistake. They begin living almost entirely in their head. They analyze instead of acting, predict instead of experiencing, think instead of feeling. At first, this feels safe, but over time, it quietly steals their ability to live in the present moment. And that brings us to the final behavior, the one that's usually misunderstood the most. Deeply analytical people often procrastinate, even on things they genuinely care about. This sounds contradictory. If they think so much, shouldn't they be more productive? Not necessarily, because analytical minds are extremely good at seeing complexity. They can imagine every possible outcome, every risk, every mistake, every inefficient path before they even begin. And while this ability is powerful, it creates a hidden problem. Action starts feeling dangerous. The more possibilities you see, the harder it becomes to choose one. The more deeply you think, the easier it becomes to over-prepare forever. This is why some of the smartest people you know feel stuck in life. Not because they lack potential, but because their mind turns every decision into an endless simulation. They wait for certainty that never comes. And here's the painful truth. Analysis can become a form of emotional protection. If you stay in planning mode, you never have to risk failure. If you stay in research mode, you never have to confront reality. If you keep thinking, you can delay vulnerability indefinitely. But life does not reward perfect analysis. It rewards movement. At some point, analytical people have to learn something incredibly difficult. Understanding life is not the same as living it. And once they realize this, everything changes. They stop trying to eliminate uncertainty completely. They stop treating every mistake like evidence of incompetence. They begin using their analytical mind as a tool instead of a prison, because the goal was never to stop thinking deeply. The goal is learning when to stop analyzing and finally step into action. So if you recognize yourself in these behaviors, there's nothing wrong with you. Your mind simply processes the world differently. The challenge is making sure that intelligence serves your life instead of consuming it. And honestly, the most dangerous thing about an analytical mind isn't overthinking. It's underliving. If this video resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to Mind Beneath, because in the next video, we're going to explore the hidden psychology behind why intelligent people often feel emotionally exhausted around others, and why most advice about being social completely misses the point. See you there.